If you like to laugh, and who doesn't, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to My Funny House with the Powell brothers. Frank Powell is a real estate broker who was born and raised in San Diego, along with Frank's brother Mark, a real estate broker who also lives in San Diego. Each week, the Powell brothers bring in a special guest comedian to share hilarious real estate stories so you can learn what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership. So now, let's get into it. With My Funny House, here are your hosts, Frank and Mark Powell on The Answer San Diego.
Good morning, San Diego. Welcome to My Funny House with the Powell brothers. My name is Mark Powell. I'm a real estate broker here in San Diego, and I work with my brother, Frank Powell, who's also a real estate broker.
Thank you. Look at the applause. Was that applause from me or you?
That was for you.
Hi, my name. Good morning. It's Frank Powell. Thanks for tuning in again on this beautiful Saturday in San Diego. We always love to live here. And, of course, we got a really special show. Like last week, we got back in two of our family members. One of them's Maria Herman. I'll introduce her first, and she can take it from here. Thank you for coming, Maria.
Thank you
got a whistle.
so much. I got a whistle.
You got a whistle.
Wow, is that illegal?
Is
that appropriate right now?
We're going to get in trouble.
Or do I allow it? Am I offended? Like a fake accent you were trying to do, or a fake Australian accent a little bit ago? With me in the audience, or here in the studio, with me everywhere in the world, all the time, the one and only Tony Calabrese, comedian extraordinaire.
Forget about it. Good morning.
It's Tony.
Yeah.
Mama.
You broke my heart, Fredo.
Oh.
Give me back my meatballs. Wow. Okay.
Nobody touches my meatballs.
It's going to be a great show.
Okay, today we are talking about the difference between buying a commercial property and a residential property. We often get this question. We get emails on it and we get phone calls. And people will call us off some of our commercial property signs, or they'll call us off of our residential signs. They'll ask us questions. The first thing we need to know is, what is the difference between a residential property and a commercial property? And I'm going to ask Frank again. Frank, tell us what is a Frank, what's a residential property?
It sounds obvious, but I'm going to make it. A residential property is where you reside, where you live, where your home is, where you sleep, where you do your cooking, where you raise a family, a dog, and all that stuff. That's where you want. It could be a mobile home, it could be a rental, it could be a single family structure, but it's your home.
Okay, then let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does a duplex qualify as a residential property?
Yes.
Well, why?
Well, a duplex is a unit that's split down the center with a wall separating two separate families. So you have both families are residential, so it's sold as a residential unit.
That's correct. It's so anything below. Good, you got it right.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything below 4 units.
No trick questions today.
Well, the reason why I asked me that is because when you get to a certain number of these things put together, you start going in the commercial.
Right. What's the number?
It's anything above 4 units.
Correct. Okay. Well, anything above 4 units, we use a different type of a contract. So 5 units or more comes under a commercial deal. 4 units or less are still covered under something called RESPA, which is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. And you have certain protections as a home buyer if you're purchasing 4 or fewer units, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, protection's good.
Yes. Yeah. Can we hire protection?
Even though you grew up most people grew up in a house or an apartment. You don't really look at how the plumbing works. You're not really worried about how the electrical looks. You just plug in something and it works. You don't know how it's all wired. You don't know how the drainage is. You don't know how things work mechanically. So these are the protections that you need when you buy a house. And that's why we always get a home inspector and so forth.
Okay, but is a mobile home, not a motor home with an engine that drives around, a mobile home that's on a chassis, is that also considered a residential property?
It could be both. That goes under 2 different codes. One of them's almost like a vehicle code, and one of them does go under a structure. And what eliminates that is whether or not you have it tied or secured to the ground for earthquakes. If it's mobile, you can just pull it out. It goes under something different. But typically, if you want to get a home loan and you want it to go residential, you have to anchor it down to the ground in order to avoid problems if there's an earthquake.
So if you were living in your taco truck then that wouldn't. You'd have to anchor it for it to be residential.
No, that'd be
You'd have
commercial
to-
because you're.
That would be
selling-
heaven, is what that would be.
Tony wants a meatball truck.
Absolutely.
Okay, so think about this. There's certain things you have to do before buying a residential property. We'll get into the commercial properties in a few minutes here. But first, property must be well ventilated. And Frank, I don't really want to. Well, there's certain things about a property when you purchase it. You want to make sure that the weep screeds are clear.
This is a structural part that I was talking about that no one knows about.
Okay,
So they don't know what to look for. So let's say you have a part of your house that always has a shadow, and you start seeing mildew and mold grow up on the stucco. And then you have to look like, what's causing it? It's not just a shadow. You have these things that when stucco gets wet, really wet, it'll drip. It's actually porous. And so it has to leak out of the wall. And there's an area in between the sidewalk and the screen, or that stucco, it's like an inch, that allows water not to be retained inside the wall.
Yeah, people don't even know that they have it. If you look on your house, you'll see that the stucco on your wall sticks out a little bit farther than the footing. But sometimes that gets covered up if they have
Right, so if you don't know what you're doing, let's say you want to put a sidewalk around your house, and you go up above the weep screen, now you've created what's called a dam, and what that dam does is hold water, and that water could be going through the walls, and then you get a mold issue on the other side. So so when he talks about ventilation, you want to make sure that the house is ventilated, not to have these mold places where things can happen that you don't want to happen.
I thought a weep screen was when I looked at my bank account on the computer.
Yeah, what is it? I knew a guy named Stucco in the 8th grade. But
Okay, there's some benefits of buying a residential property over a commercial property. One of them is a residential property typically costs less than a commercial property. There's fewer complications in the deal. And the reason is when you purchase a residential property, you're going to use a standard residential purchase contract. But when you purchase a commercial property, it's a little bit different. Do you want to go into detail?
Well, it's a
about
lot
that?
different. Typically, you're going to involve a real estate attorney. Okay, so you want to bring in like the big guns. There's more deals that could be made. They don't have RESPA, so you have to really buyer beware of what you're buying, what you're purchasing. There could be things done outside of the escrow, like I'll pay you this much cash and I'll give you a boat and a place to stay. They can trade real estate. So there's a lot of like 1031 exchanges, which is a different topic, but there's more moving parts and a lot more money involved in dealing with a commercial business. Selecting the right one, the location, what does it produce? Is it in a main thoroughway? Is it easy access to public transportation? So there's a lot of things you got to view with a commercial property.
does it have tenants that are paying rent?
Yeah, right. What's
That's
your
a good
cap
one.
rate?
Right.
So if there's somebody like, cap rate is your capitalization rate of how much you get per month from someone paying the lease there. Is there an anchor tenant inside? Like let's say it's a shopping mall and you got a good Starbucks or a Walmart, something that's going to secure it so that big guy's paying for
Blockbuster?
it.
Well, a lot of times, a lot of times the
that?
bank want to make sure that you've got long-term leases for your
Correct.
tenants that are in there
Yes.
before they'll.
Yeah. Well, technology really kind of did a number on commercial properties because you remember Blockbusters. You go in there
Yes.
and you rent a video, and people they hung around for a long time before they finally said, "Hey."
And all the record stores. Remember we used to go buy
Tower
the
Records.
Tower Records.
Oh, I missed those.
Well, those are gone.
I know.
Yeah. So
Remember that?
there's a whole bunch of things that happen. Yeah, I mean, this is what's happening right now. That's why there may be a shopping mall for sale or commercial property, but don't think it's such a great buy because there may be a reason why it's empty or the reason why they're selling it. Find the motivation of why they're selling it. There could be everyone moving out of the town or going somewhere else, or they're going to take away the anchor tenant or whatever it is. So it's a lot more investigation. It's more difficult to find. You got to talk to a lot more people. You have to get commercial realtors, which are experts in that field. And so there's a lot of steps.
So Frank, you mentioned when you're buying a residential house, you'll have an inspection report, and they'll check the weep screed, they'll check the ventilation, make sure that if they have those little popcorn whirly birds up there, they meet code and stuff. But when you buy a commercial property, there's a different type of an inspection. There's actually two inspections.
Yeah.
So
It's called a phase 1 and a phase 2. A phase 1 is a general inspection. Let's say you want to put a restaurant, but the area that you're going to buy used to contain a gas station.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. So phase one will
Well, I've been to some
determine-
restaurants that give me gas.
Yeah, let that go.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
there's that taco truck
I'm
story.
glad that came up.
Was the
today.
meatballs? It was the meatballs.
Stay away from Olive Garden, will you, please.
Yeah, so you may have soil to deal with, unlike residential where you wouldn't probably have a gas tank under your house. So you have to go, how do I get rid of that soil? Where do I take it? How much is it going to cost? Because contaminated soil cannot be dumped almost anywhere in California anymore. So you have to have it shipped out to another state, and then they put a number on it. You have that number, and if they ever have to relocate that earth, they're going to call you and you have to pay for it.
Well, that's called a phase one study is the preliminary overview.
Right.
But there's also something called a phase two study. That's way more involved. So what do they do with that?
That's what they do. Like they'll do a soil sample.
Now, how do they get the soil out of the ground?
They drill into it. They do a core sample depending on what the schematics say, like where the tank is located. Did they slurry it? Maybe they already dug it up and put cement inside of the empty tank, so it's not an issue. The soil around the tank to see whether or not it leaked for years and what's down there. So these are things that take sometimes weeks, sometimes months. And then there's obviously foundation issues. There's drainage issues because they're dealing with oils. If you have a restaurant, you're cooking with oil. If you have a motor shop, you're dealing with motor oil, contamination, gasoline,
I know.
petroleum.
But sometimes things are buried. You don't want them dug up.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
A little bit.
Right. I
Yeah,
was just thinking
no.
that.
Never bury someone by a tank because it'll always end up being dug up again. Yeah. So that's the tough part. So sometimes you'll see like a beautiful parking lot and you go, why don't they build on this?
Yeah.
And it could be
Can't.
just because you can't.
Yeah, it can't.
Right. There's either pipelines underneath, there's contaminated soil, like the area of the dump off the 52, things like that. So you got to check.
I wonder what state takes most of the dirty dirt.
It used to be Arizona. Arizona used to take us at, in Nevada. They had the desert, but then they're getting too much, and they finally go, no, we're contaminating the soil around the desert, and that goes down to
Banks won't touch stuff that's been a gas station. They won't even refinance a lot of gas stations now.
right.
because Of all the
Well,
environmental issues.
as we go away more from petroleum, we plug in our cars. It'll be an issue, but yeah. I don't think they're going to dig them all out because
No,
it's just too much hassle.
no
They're going to
way.
leave them there.
Well, there is also an advantage of buying, let's say you bought a duplex. You go, okay, I'm going to live in one half. I'm going to rent the other half to help pay my rent. So there's an advantage to buying a residential property if you want to buy it for income because it's probably easier to get a tenant, a renter,
Correct.
versus what you're talking about, looking for the anchor tenant, whether it's a Walmart or Rite Aid or big block store.
But you're qualifying on your own income for that and what you put down on a duplex. Many times they're not even looking at what your tenant's going to bring in when they're financing you. They're looking at what your income is right now on that.
Right,
piece of
right,
property.
exactly.
This sounds like
Real cash.
This sounds like a person who's got like a personality disorder because one day they want to buy a little duplex where they're going to live on one side, but the next day they might buy a shopping center with a Walmart? Are you trying to? I'm like, well, you could do this or that. Like, when would these be the one or the other choice ever?
Exactly.
Ever.
Never.
It would be like I get this building, this commercial real estate building with 100 apartments in it, or this Walmart, and then I'll go live in the Walmart. I mean,
wasn't there a movie once where a kid lived in a Target? He got stuck in a Target store from a long time.
No, that was actually real, and that was you.
that sounds like
I was going to
fun.
say, Mark.
Well, my mom was trying to get rid of Mark and just left him.
Maybe it was just a bad dream.
just a nightmare.
Frank, this is something that people also want to know. Okay, we know what a residential property is because most of us live in it. But what is the definition of a commercial property, or what are commercial properties?
I guess the definition would be something like 100 or more people occupying a building that produce a product or something like that.
Well, it's actually commercial properties.
guessing.
Commercial properties are used for businesses.
wait, stop down. Frank, you didn't know the exact answer.
I know.
Can you
We're
believe
on
that?
like
No, he
show,
does.
show
He does.
50 or something.
He knows.
He knows everything.
He knows the
I know
exact
he
answer.
does.
Frank
Commercial
knows all.
properties are used for business purposes. However,
Or manufacturing.
you can use a residential property for business purposes now, especially after COVID.
They used to be really regulating that at the beginning, but since we got into the internet, everyone's doing a business out of your house because all you need to do a business and look into it is a computer. If you have a computer, you can find a business online now.
But there's certain businesses that you can't run Tony,
Right. Well,
Hey,
wait, Tony, there's certain businesses.
certain things you got to do in person. You know what I mean?
no
can't-
waterboarding.
Yeah, you can't run, let's say,
Yeah.
a Blockbuster's out of your house. I mean, you can't. You can't.
Tony can do it.
You can't run a business where there's going to be a whole lot of traffic. You can't run an automobile
Well,
repair shop out of your garage.
You got to make sure there's an entrance through the basement behind the house.
Well, there are some properties that you can. They're called multi-use properties.
Right, multi-use property.
Yeah, so they do have a residential unit and
Right.
they have a commercial.
And
And,
they have
so
a-
if you're on acreage, it could be this is your house in the front of the property and your business in the back. But typically in cities, you'll see there's apartments above and then
Correct.
then the commercials are
We
the
just
first
sold
level.
we had a
just sold
restaurant we used to own a restaurant with apartments on top.
Yeah.
Right, and you have the commercial below.
Right.
So
That's
so
a good mix. It's called
That's a good. And also the land. There's certain lands zoning for commercial, and if you see where we're recording here in the University Town Center area, this is zoned for commercial buildings. So you'll see these buildings that are 20, 30 stories high. However, you go 2 miles up the road, it's zoned for residential, and you can't build a 40-story building in University City.
until now.
Like I don't know if I can
Couple
imagine.
okay, those of you who haven't know, Gavin Newsom signed into law something that changes all of the properties in California. When you have a property, it's a single house. Okay, so if you just picture wherever a house is, it's one house. It's called a residential one. R1.
Single family residential.
Right. So what Gavin Newsom said, in order to control the homeless situation or try to help alleviate it,
And the housing.
and the housing market and the inventory, the low inventory, and the people who are not making new houses, he decided to change everyone from an R1 to an R whatever you want to buy. I mean, whatever you
Well,
want
you
to
can go
build.
up to R14.
Oh, okay, so literally, if you have enough room in your house on your residential street, you can knock down your whole house and build 14 condo units.
Yeah, it's Senate Bill 9 and 10. You have to read it in detail. But
Right.
what they do is they allow multi-units now built on single-family lots. So it's essentially rezoning.
But they've done.
family.
If you go to like to La Jolla and places, you'll see like some of them are now condos or they switch from condos. So we're doing it. But those were permits that were hard to get.
Yeah.
But now he's giving all of California permission to build on their property.
That's why you see a lot of these people saying, "If I'll buy your house cash," because if you have a small house on a large lot, that
looking
will
at the
probably
lot.
be developed.
This is where
but it's
real
driving
estate-
neighbors. It's driving neighborhoods crazy.
Nuts. I
They're
mean,
going,
everyone's going crazy just when you build a granny flat. Okay, so if you build one little thing for your granny or a 600 square foot house in your backyard, it already the reason why they get pissed because there's always going to be two people in there with two cars.
Right.
So then you got a parking problem and everyone gets upset. Imagine building 14 units.
Well, we're all supposed to be on bicycles.
Oh, that's right. We're supposed
Well,
to.
they just reduced. They just voted to reduce the parking requirements for commercial buildings in San Diego.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you get you
Well, listen, from now until 5 years from now, everything will change. The automatic car, you will have an app on your phone that you press, and a car will pull up, electrical vehicle with no driver, and you tell them where you want to go, or tell the car where you
like
want to go.
Total Recall.
And you're in the back, and it's happening right now. They're testing it in Phoenix and 3 other states, and it's actually working.
Oh, my wife does that now.
So even though it may be a bummer to not be able to have car access, it may be more economical for you to take these transportations
Autonomous
right
cars.
from your house.
Right, and that's why you won't need the parking.
Right.
And imagine how much more you'll be able to drink. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
I thought they were going to have flying cars. I was waiting for the flying cars.
I
to
thought
come
we'd
out.
have. Listen, at my age, aren't we supposed to have jetpacks?
We are.
Remember
Remember
when
the
we were
Jetsons?
kids?
Yeah.
I think that's a different drug. So,
Oh, I lived through disco. I could tell you a lot.
Oh my God.
Okay, things to consider before buying a commercial property. One is, can you afford it? I mean, they're way more expensive. Can you build on it? What's the growth potential? What is the capitalization rate or the rate of return on your cash investment? Would you get more money if you invested in the stock market or some other area? So there's a lot more things to think about when you're buying an income property. And when people come to us, the Powell Brothers at Powell Brothers Realty, and they want to buy a house, and they think a lot about, well, am I going to make money on it? Is it going to appreciate in this? The house that you want to live in should be the house that you want to live in. If you want to buy an income property and all of those questions that you're asking, then we'll help you buy an income property, and you can base it upon the growth of. But the house that you buy should be the house that you enjoy the view, you enjoy the backyard. It's your home. That's where you want to live.
You want to live there, but it could also be a stepping stone.
Correct.
So you just want to make sure you take care of it. You're going to have to live somewhere. Why pay rent when you can own a place?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Okay.
here's a difference. We're doing like residential versus commercial. If you are in a hobby, like let's say you love working on cars and you just cannot stop working on cars, that's when you start going and looking at commercial, because this is going to be part of your life. So you go, hey, instead of doing this, I can make more money if I buy the building. So these are the kind of people we have, like, hey, we want to open up a certain production. If you're making clothes or manufacturing or distributing, then you start looking at commercial. You have to have a reason. It's not just like a good investment.
Let me ask you a question, Frank. What if you were a comedian? Should you buy a building and have your own comedy?
No, never. Don't buy your own comedy club.
Poor investment.
Okay. So
Never.
you guys know, because you work at all these comedy. Remember the Improv? It was a really popular. Bud Friedman. He had the Improvs all over. What happened to them?
They exist.
Yeah, they
Oh, they do?
Yeah. just
Okay. We just don't have that one in San Diego
Right, they're-
anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what happens if we want to get a hold of?
This show went by really
Flew
fast.
by.
What happens if we want to get?
fly by?
What happens if we want to get a hold of Maria?
You should go to Comedy Heights, and we have a show every Saturday night at
Oh, yeah.
Twigs. It's
That's so awesome.
It's the most
Best show in San
It's the
Diego.
best independent.
What year
comedy
are you
show
on? How many years have you?
10 years.
10 years.
At the same location,
ComedyHeights.com.
Park in Madison. Yeah, it's
So
great.
good.
So
And what
find
about-
me at ComedyHeights.com.
What about Tony?
TonyCalabrese.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay.
All social.
And if you have a special event and you need an MC, you can hire Tony or Maria. They're
Right.
the best MCs. They will guarantee to make your event better. And if you want to get a hold of us, Frank will tell you how to do it.
You can call us at 858-922-7725. You can look at us on PowellBrothersRealty.com or go to our YouTube channel, My Funny House with the Powell Brothers.
Yeah, My
Thanks
Funny
again
House.
for tuning in.
Thanks for listening,
Keep
everybody.
sending in the questions.
We'll see you next
keep
week.
going.
Take care, San Diego.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today for My Funny House with the Powell Brothers, right here on The Answer San Diego. Join us next week as the Powell Brothers bring you more funny stories of what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership, and bring the laughs to you with yet another hilarious guest comedian. To find out more about the Powell Brothers, be sure to check out their website at PowellBrothersRealty.com, or you can visit MyFunnyHouse.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week for My Funny House on The Answer San Diego.